All right, welcome to the daily market recap for Monday, August 4th. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the action today of the indexes, liquid leaders, industry ETFs, then end the video with long and short setups going into tomorrow, just like we do with every daily recap. If you guys enjoy the video, please leave a like. And if you want to hear my market thoughts throughout the day, along with a live stream at the market open, you can sign up for the Discord using the link below. All right, jumping into it. Last week, we had a bunch of panic selling, and for good reason. We were extended in the short term. We got gap ups on Meta, Microsoft, Roblox, a lot of things that were extended. We saw that get sold off into on Thursday. And then with the job numbers being revised down, we saw the large gap down and kind of flush on volume on Friday. Complete turnaround from that point. We gapped up, opened on the low, closed on the high, back through the 20-day, the 5-day, and the 10-day moving averages, almost closing this gap down zone. So where that takes us is we're in a market with a ton of volatility right now, and that's not usually a sign of an overall healthy market or an overall healthy uptrend. At this point, I think we need to see volatility actually contract before we get some sustainable patterns. Just because we had a good day today, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I would rather have a gap up than another gap down. But I don't think we're just out of the clear and this was a 2 day shakeout kind of thing. I think we're probably entering a period of pretty high volatility overall. So when you have that, I just tend to size down a little bit, play both the long and short sides a little bit more, always trying to buy the strongest stocks, short the weakest stocks. But overall, I don't see a ton of panic in the market for good reason. We had great action today. But I also see bulls just immediately celebrating that, of course, Friday was a shakeout and we're going to just rip higher. And that's not great sentiment to have overall. So, with this type of volatility, I don't expect a cleanup trend. I expect this volatility continue until we see that contraction. S&P 500 up 1.5% today with similar action, gap up, open on the low, closed on the high. A little bit weaker overall compared to the NASDAQ, but still right at that resistance gap high. The growth stocks of the Russell 2000, IWO, great action today. Undercut the 200-day moving average on Friday, closed well, while the other indexes, the S&P 500 and NASDAQ, closed right near the low of the day. IWO actually closed pretty high in the daily range. Today we gap up, get through the 5, the 10, the 20-day moving average. And this is a really good shakeout, but what we'll want to see is a pullback, a higher low in the structure, and then we can play kind of a breakout from there. ARKK, some more weakness overall, still below the 20-day and the 5, the 10, the 20-day as compared to the other indexes. Did was up 3.3% today, did close on the high. But one thing I forgot to say, look at the volume today compared to Thursday and Friday for all of these indices. You can see very, very light volume, except for IWO, which is a sign that that might be the theme, like smaller cap growth names that we want to rotate to. But ARKK still below the 200, or sorry, the 20-day moving average, two resistance gaps from the highs, a little bit of weakness coming in. And then IBIT tracking Bitcoin, um, some higher highs, higher lows. Overall, still under the 20-day moving average. Still needs a little bit more time to like shake, tighten up, so we can have a pivot to go higher. Taking a look at the leaders, great action on the leaders today. 8 of them were up on the day. 3 of them made new 52-week highs. We'll just start with those. DoorDash, if it wasn't for earnings coming up here on the 6th, Friday would have been a perfect buy spot with an undercut of the support gap, got to the 20-day moving average, bounced right at that area, and then on a reclaim of the support gap low, that would be your entry versus the low of the pullback. Great action today, up another 3.9%, closing at new highs. Just a monster stock, basically off the lows of the 2022 bear market from 42 up to 260. Great action. MP, a new addition to the leaders list, made new 52-week highs today, higher highs, higher lows, kind of just consolidating right below that previous high there. What we don't want to see with this, sorry, what we don't want to see with this is a gap down tomorrow and then a takeout of today's lows. Otherwise, this could be seen as kind of like a failed break to new highs and then you can roll lower. I don't think that's what will happen with MP. We've just seen strong like relative strength from the pullback just to the 10-day moving average, but just something to watch for if this was a 1 day bounce after a pretty sharp pullback in the indexes. Palantir up 4% and up after hours. I think another 2% or so, maybe 3%. Let's check the 5 minute. So trading at 167. So nice little bump after hours on earnings. Great test of the 20-day moving average on Friday, and then gap and go today. GEV continues to be one of the leaders in the energy space, AI energy space. Higher highs, higher lows, new closing high today, bouncing off the 5-day moving average. Did close relatively weak in the range. A lot of the energy names got going today and then started to pull back later in the day. So one thing to watch for is if we lose the 5-day moving average, maybe this is the next group that starts to pull back and you see some churning in the indexes. Robinhood, it hurts me to look at this chart because this was my bread and butter setup. I should have been absolutely all over this long setup. No excuses, and did not pull the trigger. Very quick sell off right at the beginning of the day, under the 20-day moving average, under the two support gaps, and then immediately checked back and reclaimed. That should have been the entry with size. This has been the liquid leader in the market this entire uptrend. Really hurts looking at this chart because this is like my A plus setup and I didn't trigger it. So one that I'll be watching for another like retest of that area, $98, just basically under $100. The stop would be Friday's low on that, but great response to that gap zone. Great response to the shake of the 20-day moving average, and now we close back above all the key moving averages and looks good for higher. NVIDIA, good gap up after a little shakeout on Friday. Maybe a lower high here, but this is a new closing high overall, which is not a bearish sign. Roblox up 4.5%. Still kind of squatting after that earnings sell off. Let's measure that because it was from the earnings open. We sold off 16%. Now we're down 12.5% from that point. We'll see how we kind of build out another base here. I think this will need some time to actually set up before going higher, but we'll take it day by day. Reddit, a new addition to the leaders list. Awesome action. I mean, look at the volume the 3 days. The day before earnings, day of earnings, and then today. Gapped up, rallied, sold off a little bit intraday, but then closed really well. If the market does pull back and this kind of puts in a little flag into the HVC area at 188, that would be a spot that I would look to be aggressive on. And then Rocket Lab has earnings. I think it's Thursday, August 7th. Is that before market? No, after the close. Perfect looking flag here. Nothing wrong with a little pullback to the 20-day moving average. Good shakeout of the lows of the pullback on Friday and then closed well. Super tight price action today. If it wasn't for earnings, this would be like the top setup in the market. I still think you could take it on a gap up, break through today's high, use your stop at the 20-day moving average and play it and try to get a couple percent into earnings. Maybe I'm kind of talking myself into it right now. It's something that I will be watching. If it wasn't for earnings, though, this is like A plus type setup. So overall, leaders are acting great. Indexes had a nice bounce back day. Let's take a look at some of the industry ETFs. Gold miners, GDX, really stole the show today. After two closes under the 50-day moving average, it looked like this was kind of like a false move higher, uppercut the new highs, pulled back. But then we followed that with two gap ups, and today's gap was very impressive. Open on the low, closed right on the high, up 4.8%. And this just looks like another set of higher lows, higher lows, higher low, higher low, nice quality base, and now we're breaking into new highs there. NLR, the nuclear theme, great gap up, wedge pop through the 20-day moving average. Um, I'll back off on the wedge pop. Typically, you would need a higher low in the setup. This is just kind of a shakeout at this point, but does reclaim all the moving averages, closes on the high, and overall, good to see. Semiconductors, SMH, similar gap up, got through the 5, the 10, the 20-day moving average, closed at high of day. KWEB, really good response off the 50-day moving average and this breakout retest. This is a base that we've been talking about a lot on this channel. 2.5 for a 3-year base going sideways. Things got nice and tight. We broke out, and it came all the way back to that breakout point, shook it out on Friday, and then gapped up. Gaps mean less with China stocks or with any stocks that trade on another exchange, but good response after Friday into those moving averages. We'll see if that's just like the breakout retest and we put in a overall high or low in the structure. The other groups that I wanted to cover, ITB, where is it? Home builders ETF continue to look like rates are going to be coming down. This is very rate intensive. You could see the blue skyscrapers of volume as the stock or this ETF gets soaked up or accumulated here. Higher lows all the way through. Now we've got a date with the 200-day moving average, another test at that point, but really good signs of accumulation here. Higher lows all the way through. Ugly close followed by a gap up on Friday and then push through today. Great looking chart overall. And then another kind of rate intensive ETF, XBI, this is biotech ETF, undercut the support gap. Overall, a lower low, but held the 50-day moving average. Nice move on Friday to close positive, and then higher highs, higher lows today, back through the key moving averages. Really looking at this 200-day moving average and this resistance gap zone, basically that pivot at 88.34. If we could get through there, this could be like the next group that sees money rotate into it, and we could keep this bull market going. Now, going into the long setups, I have 9. I'm not super excited to trade on the long side at this point. I still think there are some setups on the long side, some setups on the short side. There's a lot of volatility in the market, so I think shortening up your time frame if you're going to trade some of these might be the move. That's probably what I would be doing. But let's just jump into them. First one is Wayfair, a stock that was a monster in 2021, starting to be a monster off the lows here from $20 up to $73, testing that 20-day moving average a couple times and getting support right around that action. Today gapped up on earnings, and we see strong close after a kind of like morning sell-off into the 5-day moving average, but strong close overall. We'll look for a gap up and then a retest of the high volume close there, the earnings close. Or if we gap up and then like consolidate for the rest of the week, just keeping this on your radar is something that I'd watch for. If the market does just immediately pull back, then filling this gap and then probably at that point the 20-day moving average would catch up to that $65 area. That would be another spot that I would want that I would watch, but not for tomorrow. If we just like immediately sold off and got all the way through $65, that would not be a buy to me. APLD, super strong action, gapped up on earnings on Thursday, up 31%. Good action on Friday overall. Shook out to the 10-day, but closed only down 4.7%. And after being up 31%, that kind of action while the indexes were pulling back so sharply on Friday, great action overall. That relative strength showed today with the indexes popping. This went up 11.4%. Now we're just looking for a pullback into the closing price of what was that 13.14. Little pullback into 13.14. Stop would be today's low. Reddit, kind of similar action with Wayfair. We got the move already today. Now we're looking for a pullback into the HVC, into the gap zone at 188. I would only buy it on a pullback if the indexes were pulling back as well. I wanted to show relative strength as it pulls back. Otherwise, this should just continue to run and no clean entry point on that way. Robinhood, again, this is a chart that I'm going to stare at for hours because I should have taken this trade. It's okay. We'll just watch it for another retest of those gap zones right around $100. Play it versus the high volume close from earnings at 93. Net, good relative strength the entire way. Kind of weird volatility on Friday, but that makes sense with the indexes down so much. Undercut the 20-day moving average and then closed back above the 10-day on Friday. Gapped up today. Not quite a wick play since we took out yesterday's highs, but in the spirit of one where we're consolidating into the wick there. A couple different ways to play this is on strength just through 210. I would rather play it because I tend to do well with pullback buys. If we pull back into the gap zone, into that 10-day moving average on a market pullback, then I would be looking to be a little bit more aggressive right at $200. NVIDIA, we're looking for a pullback into the 20-day EMA, into the support gap at 171. Call this a lower high, and then we can flag out into that area. Might take a couple days to do so, but we'll watch that 171 area. RKT, similar to net, this is the spirit of a Oliver Kell wick play. Because we took the low today was below the close, it's not technically a wick play, but we are consolidating in the wick. This is a name that has the ability to really run when small caps get going. So we saw the rotation into IWO away from the mega caps, into away from the Nasdaq Thursday and Friday. If that trend continues, this is a name that can get very explosive. So just through today's high, stop at today's low would be the trade there. COUR, probably the setup I'm most excited for. If we zoom out, you can see we've had this year-long base after the stage 4 decline. You have your stage 1 base here. Then we gap up on the highest volume in over a year, close up 36%, rally the second day up into this resistance gap, got a little bit ahead of itself, and has since really pulled back in an orderly manner, sitting above the 5-day moving average. With this, I would just take it through that HVC. Stop would be yesterday's low and the or Friday's low and the and the 5-day moving average at $12.08. Probably just put it to $12 there. But this is a name that when you get a base like this, you get an earnings reaction and then consolidation after that. As long as the market doesn't have just a waterfall lower, this is an this is the setup that I'm most excited for, COUR. And then APPF, another earnings play, consolidating above the HVC. I would love to see like another day or two consolidating around that area before I play it, but pull back into the HVC, the high volume close, versus meaning that your stop at Friday's low is playable. I'm probably using this more as a just like a risk on, risk off measure of the market. Not as excited for that setup as COUR, but you saw the power up 19%, then up 0.6% overall, breaking into new highs in that manner. Very bullish sign. Now to the short setups. Got a couple here. Got 10 to go over. First is TTMI. We saw a lot of volume come in around earnings without any price appreciation. And usually, when you get that after a move like this from 15 up to 50, you tend to get it's not always, obviously, but that is kind of a sign to me that this needs to cool off. We saw similar actions out of QS, out of AEVA, where we made those massive moves, and then we got a gap down, and that really started the acceleration lower. We got the gap down. We got a little gap up today that I forgot to draw in the chart. But then we saw a really tight price action, didn't reclaim the 5 and the 10-day moving averages like the indexes did. So some relative weakness there and really light volume on the bounce today. So with this, I'm just looking for a break under today's low as a short or a uppercut and fail of the last 2 days highs. Either way, that's a name that am trying to play on the short side. SFM, we've talked about this in length. It's a stock that's made a monster move. You have your stage 2 uptrend, you have your stage 3 top. Now I think you're probably starting your stage 4 decline. Today, awesome action for if you're trying to short it. Uppercut and fail at the 20-day EMA at the resistance gap, closed at the low of the day, while the indexes were sky high, very green. Not good action overall. Well, good action if you're short, bad action if you're long. Now we're just looking for a lower high test of that resistance gap to short versus today's high. MMYT, same kind of structure. You have your stage 2 uptrend, your stage 3 top. Now your stage 4 decline is starting. We're already below the 200-day moving average, uppercutting and failing that in the 2 resistance gaps right around 103. Big sell-off last week, actually not on Thursday and Friday, but on Tuesday and Wednesday. Little bounce today to the 5-day. Just looking for a breakthrough today's low and then stop at today's high. MSTR also looks like it's kind of cracked and starting to head to the downside. You barely got into new highs here and then started to see some major distribution. Wedged down into the 50-day, then gap down and accelerated on Friday. Nice reversal today, but we're looking for an uppercut and fail of the gap zone at 401.60 area. Hopefully that 20-day moving average will catch up right around that area tomorrow or maybe the next day, and that would be the key spot to watch for MSTR. OPEN, this does have earnings tomorrow, so I am not likely to hold into earnings, but if we can get an uppercut and fail of the resistance gap at, what would this be, 288 intraday, then you can short it, try to see if it really accelerates to the downside after uppercutting that area. And then you have some profit cushion to hold into earnings. I still probably wouldn't because we're in a pretty crazy market. Either direction, we're just seeing volatility pick up. And I don't want to hold shares into an earnings event like that, but if we can get an uppercut and fail, I'll probably take that trade as just a day trade and see if we can sell off into that earnings. BMNR continues to just leak lower. The stock went from $4 to what was it, 160 at its high, 161. And then just count the blue candles from the high. After the high, we've had one, and that was just churning. Red candle, massive red candle, and then just distribution the entire way. A false breakout move, more distribution, rejection at the 50-day moving average, more distribution, and now this looks just ready to collapse here. Especially if the market gets weaker, this should just roll right over. NEGG, this has been super frustrating to short. Obviously, in hindsight, this has been a better long. I did get short this today on the uppercut and fail of the previous day's high. Then when it lost the intraday VWAP around, I guess we could just jump in here and map it. VWAP. I'm not sure why that's not showing. But right around $64 was the short. 64. That seemed a little high. Call it like 60. I forget exactly. I'll post where I got it short, but I think after a move from $3 up to $70, a couple of red days here, and really the red day when the market and risk on type stocks were ripping higher, not a good sign overall. If this loses today's low, I'll be adding to the short and trying to play this just for a complete move lower. This chart really reminds me of QMCO, and we know how that played out. N uppercut and fail the resistance gap, the 5-day, not quite to the 10-day today. It's a lower volume stock. So position sizing, you have to size this correctly, much lower than you would your others. But another name that's run from $6 up to $50. Now we're putting in some lower highs and just through today's low, and this could really accelerate to the downside. The next two are, I think, scam stocks, MIMI. We see the entire float get soaked up on May 28th. We see just wash sales all the way up. And these long lower wicks just show you that there's no actual demand for the stock. We just wick lower, and things get bought up here. Now we're starting to see volatility pick up here. It could have still more room to the upside, but we've seen these stocks play out like OST, and I go over this all the time, but OST, entire float soaked up one day, they wedge it up with wash sales, and then they flush it lower. Um, we have TCLA down 76% in one day, PTHL down, what was that down? It was down 95% in one day. So these scam stocks that get wash sailed all the way up, they do run, they run higher. So you have to position size correctly to actually sit through a move like this. But eventually they have those 90% down days. CVM, I'm not quite sure if this is the same. It's kind of acting like it, where everything gets soaked up on July 11th, then we wedge higher. Still think that this probably has some room to the upside overall, but just kind of piecing into this slowly for one of those flush days. Again, this like MIMI and CVM position sizing wise and quadruple N, you can't put like 50% of your portfolio in just hoping that you get that 90% down day. You actually have to put in just like something that you're willing to let it kind of run on you a little bit because PTHL, like it did have quite a move higher before that 95% down day. You just got to be a little bit patient and position size correctly so you can be patient with those names. All right, that's going to be the daily market recap and watch list for Monday, August 4th. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you want my daily commentary and a live stream at Market Open, sign up for the Discord using the link below. Have a great night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.